Welcome back students in your economics class again. In the part 2 of the video of industrial development in India and foreign trade under the time period 1947 to 1990. Now the very first problem of the Indian industries which was faced during the period 1951 to 1990 was unnecessary government controls and intervention. Government had imposed several types of controls such as industrial licensing, price control, restrictions on investment, etc. on the private sector in the Indian economy, because of which the private sector could not grow and develop. This hampered the growth of trade and industry in India. The second subheading is technological backwardness. There was a lack of modern technology in Indian economy. Due to the lack of modern technology, the Indian industries could not develop at the desired growth rate and speed. Strict government controls and non-availability of foreign exchange were the main reasons behind the technological backwardness. The third subheading is low productivity and poor quality. Due to the use of backward technology, there was low productivity and poor quality of goods in Indian industry. So, Indian industries could not market its products to the foreign countries as desired, and the exports were not so high at that time period. The fourth subheading is foreign exchange crisis. Due to low export, we could not earn foreign exchange. Although import substitution saved a lot of foreign exchange, but still there was a crisis of it in the country. In the year 1991, India had to take $7 billion loan from IMF and World Bank to overcome this foreign exchange crisis, as only 10 days of foreign exchange was left to do import with the countries across the world. The fifth subheading is problem of raw material. Poor availability of raw material led to low productivity of goods in the Indian industries. It caused slow growth of industry in Indian economy. Sometimes the raw materials were not available, so the industries had to close down and wait for their availability for a longer period of time. The sixth subheading is lack of capital. Indian industries required sufficient amount of capital to increase its productivity, which was not available with them. The amount of capital depends on savings, but already the income earning capacity of Indian industries was quite low, so there was no point of savings in the country. The savings were very low and they were not enough to make further investments. The seventh subheading is poor infrastructure. There was a lack of economic infrastructure in the country in the form of transportation facilities, post and telegraphic facilities, power generation facilities, and banking facilities. These kind of facilities were not well developed in the country, which led to the slow growth of the industries. The last drawback was failure of public sector enterprises. It was a major drawback of the industrial sector. Most of the public sector enterprises incurred losses, because of which the limited financial and national resources of the country wasted, and the government has to suffer huge losses in each and every project, because of which most of them were shut down. Now we are going to study about the foreign trade in India during the time period 1947 to 1990. Foreign trade in India witnessed a noticeable change after independence. Now the question arises, what do you mean by foreign trade, which is also known as international trade? International trade means the export and import of goods and services amongst different countries. It is also known as foreign trade. When one country exports and imports its goods and services with the other countries across the world. It is known as international trade. Now we are going to study about volume of foreign trade. What does it mean by volume? It refers to the value of imports and exports done by a country. Status of India's foreign trade after independence. After independence, India saw a substantial change in distinct aspects of foreign trade. Imports of India were more than the exports. There was trade deficit. That means the incoming foreign currency was less in comparison to the outgoing foreign currency, and the global market of India for imports and exports declined. What does it mean by composition of foreign trade? It refers to the type of goods and services a country exports and imports with rest of the world. The very first impact on the composition of India's foreign trade, which was clearly visible, was decrease in the percentage of agricultural products and exports in the global market. The reason behind this was that the agricultural products were used as raw materials in the Indian industries to make agro-based products, and the demand for these farming products had increased in the country because of the increase in the population. So these were the two main reasons. पहली बात, जो इंडियन एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्ट्स हैं वो रॉ मटेरियल्स की तरह इंडिया के अंदर ही यूज़ होने लगे. दूसरी बात, इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बढ़ने की वजह से जो हमारे फार्मिंग प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनकी डिमांड अपनी कंट्री के अंदर ही बढ़ गई, उनका कंजम्पशन बढ़ गया. इसीलिए एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए क्वांटिटी उतनी बचती नहीं थी इन द ग्लोबल मार्केट. The second most important change in the composition is increase in the percentage share of manufactured goods. Now if we talk about the major exports of India, it included gems, precious stones, metals, simple machines and vehicles. These were the main exports of India under the category of manufactured goods. The third most important change in the composition of foreign trade was decrease in the percentage share of conventional items of Indian exports. That means those items which were exported by India even at the time of British rule and before that. The exports of items like jute, tea, food grains, etc. declined in the global market because they were demanded more in the country by the people of India. The next topic is direction of foreign trade. It refers to the countries with which a country trades. यानी कि कोई भी देश जिन दूसरे देशों के साथ ट्रेडिंग करता है उससे ये डिटरमाइन होता है कि उसकी फॉरेन ट्रेड के डायरेक्शन में मूव कर रही है. The direction of foreign trade highlights these three elements during the time period 1947 to 1990. The very first is that the list of India's trading partners across the world had expanded. That means India कई सारी countries के साथ trading relations फिर से establish करने लगा था. The second most important point is most of the Indian exports were with USA. USA was the highest exporter from India. China was the highest importer from India. India imported its goods from China in maximum quantity. Moving on to the next topic is inward-looking trade strategy. It refers to a policy of protecting the domestic trade and domestic industries by import substitution policy. That means to substitute imports with exports and protect the Indian industries from the imported items and foreign competition was the main motive of inward-looking trade strategy. Import substitution refers to the policy of replacing foreign imports with domestic production. For this, government imposed tariffs on imported goods to make them costly and discourage their use in India, and the government fixed quotas of imported goods from different countries. इसका मतलब क्या है कि गवर्नमेंट ने दो तरीके अपनाए इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूशन करने के लिए। पहला, गवर्नमेंट ने टैक्सेस इम्पोज करे इंपोर्टेड आइटम्स के ऊपर। दूसरा, गवर्नमेंट ने क्वांटिटी रेस्ट्रिक्शंस लगाई कि इस कितनी क्वांटिटी से ज़्यादा आप गुड्स फॉरेन कंट्रीज से इंपोर्ट नहीं कर सकते। तो उससे इंपोर्ट्स काफ़ी हद तक कम हो गए और डोमेस्टिक इंडस्ट्रीज़ प्रोटेक्ट हो गई और इंडियन गुड्स की डिमांड बढ़ गई। Now students, we are going to study about the objectives of import substitution one by one. The very first purpose of import substitution, as you can see in point number 1, was to save the foreign exchange for the import of essential goods instead of utilizing the foreign exchange for the import of those items which are not essential for the country. Second point, to encourage the domestic production, that means to encourage the production of the goods in Indian economy which we had been importing from the rest of the world. Third, to use the foreign exchange for developmental imports like plant and machinery. Actually, capital goods industries were not well developed in India, so import substitution policy was adopted so that we may import only the essential and capital goods from foreign countries instead of importing the items which could be produced easily in India. There was positive impact of import substitution on the economy up to some extent. First point highlighting this is high rate of industrial growth with structural transformation. As you can see in the pic, due to the impact of this inward-looking trade policy, the contribution of industrial sector to GDP had increased. It led to high rate of industrial growth. The second point is diversification of industrial growth. Due to import substitution policy, there was diversification of industrial growth. Industries had started producing engineering goods and a wide range of consumer goods as well. There was a noticeable change and growth rate had increased in the industries, and the upcoming industries like electronic and automobiles had also been doing well. The third subheading is opportunities of investment. Government started protecting the small scale industries which opened the opportunities of investing less capital and increased self-employment. It helped to grow the economy with equity. यानी कि स्मॉल स्केल इंडस्ट्रीज़ खुलने की वजह से लोगों को अपना काम सेटअप करने का मौका मिला. Now we are going to study about the negative impact of import substitution policy on the economy of India. The very first negative impact was the growth of inefficient public monopolies. Public sector industries had been set up by the government in order to do the industrial development, but while doing so, the public monopolies resulted in inefficient working. गवर्नमेंट ने तो ये डिपार्टमेंट्स और ये पब्लिक सेक्टर अंडरटेकिंग्स ये सोच के सेटअप करी थी कि इनसे लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिलेगी, अर्निंग कैपेसिटी बढ़ेगी, कंट्री का जीडीपी इंक्रीज़ होगा, मगर उनके इनएफिशिएंट मैनेजमेंट की वजह से और उनकी मोनोपोली की वजह से जो फंक्शनिंग है वो प्रॉपरली नहीं हो पाई और लॉसेस होने लगे. द सेकेंड नेगेटिव एस्पेक्ट वॉज लैक ऑफ कॉम्पिटिशन and modernization. Because of the import substitution policy, imported items were not allowed in the country by imposing the tariffs and quota restrictions on them. So because of this, there was a lack of competition from foreign goods. Due to this, Indian industries could not evolve the concept of modernization. The third disadvantage was indiscriminate spread of public sector enterprises. Public sector enterprises were being set up here and there without planning for the proper return on the investments done by the government. गवर्नमेंट ने पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइजेज सेटअप तो रिटर्न पाने के लिए किया था कि पब्लिक वेलफेयर हो सके और अच्छा रिटर्न मिल सके, मगर उनकी इनएफिशिएंट वर्किंग की वजह से वो ठीक से वर्क नहीं कर पाई और फेल हो गई, और जो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स थे वो ब्लॉक हो गए और उस पर कोई रिटर्न नहीं मिला. The fourth negative point was economically unprofitable state enterprises. The private sector was not allowed to come up by imposing industrial licensing and other restrictions, and the public sector was not able to operate with sufficient funds and profits under the political pressure. So ultimately, public sector undertakings were shut down in most of the areas. The inefficiency of the public sector undertakings led to their closure in many areas and blockage of funds. Government had to bear the loss. As a result, it was a failure. The import substitution policy could not work out the way it was planned, and it made Indian industries very protective and less efficient. So students, that's all for today. We will meet in the next video. Till then, goodbye. Take care.